Yeah, we are recording now. This is Visual Tools meeting number 32. This series of closure meetings where we discuss our tooling and workflow. And today we'll have two talks by Aditya Athalye and Kapil Reddy. And in a moment where they will present themselves and we will discuss the topics of today, mostly about workflows and the way we use our tools, writing closure. And as we usually do, we begin by introducing ourselves, so everybody is invited to say something, about who you are, what you are about nowadays, what you care about, just briefly. Maybe Brian, would you like to begin?
Long-time software developer. My first job out of college before Clojure came along was Lisp and then Java. And so I was actually interested in Clojure from the very start, even though I've never used it in a professional manner. So it's always sort of been there in the background, and I've played with it occasionally here and there. So I do have time, another unemployed software engineer. But I am doing a little bit of work for my brother-in-law's startup at the moment. Not getting paid, but I am an investor, so I have a vested interest there. So doing a little bit of work there to keep myself busy, and hope to learn a little bit with how people interact with their tools.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and many of us have something in common. And I like this term now. Addie wrote in the chat, "fun employed," which is so perfect for some of what some of us do. Yeah. Um, yeah, maybe Leandro, would you like to say something?
Hello, I'm Leandro. I'm originally from Argentina. I'm currently living in Germany. And yes, I'm a Clojurian at heart. I've been working with Clojure some time. And I'm happy to be here because I think that being part of a community is convenient. It's convenient, and not because of professional opportunities only, but I think it's good for the soul. So yeah, that's all. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Daniel. I am a community organizer at Cycloj, also kind of fun employed. And I nowadays I do a little bit of consulting and also, my background is statistics and probability. And yeah, and now the two speakers will present themselves. And maybe Kapil, would you like to begin and say something?
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Kapil. I'm from India. I have worked, like my primary language in my career has been Clojure. Through a bunch of accidents, I started as a JavaScript and a PHP engineer, and then went on to a startup called HelpShift, where I worked most of my career, like for like around 12 years. Recently, I started my own tech consulting firm called Unravel Tech. We are working on LLMs and AI tools, and doing that with Clojure is a lot more fun, is what we are realizing. That a lot of things get easier. And whenever you speak to anyone who has used Clojure, they just want world to have more Clojure. That's why I do community work everywhere, and that's the dream.
Thank you so much. And Addie, would you like to say something?
Yep. I also got into Clojure by accident from about 2005 to 2012, 13. I was a suit, like a business school person who did some management consulting, strategy consulting. I had my own company at one point, etc. And then I had a quarter life crisis. Among other things, I learned to program at the time. And then I landed as an intern at the company where Kapil was. So that's how I got to know Kapil. We were in the same city. I'm also based in India, by the way. And I mean, I didn't know any better. So these guys were using Clojure for the backend. And I joined the QA team where we started, they were just two of us writing like dev tools and test frameworks in Clojure. Again, we didn't know better, so we just did it. And that's how, Clojure became my first language, and it's really hard for me to program in Python or JavaScript. I mean, as long as I keep it functional, it's fine. But the moment I have to think about objects, then I kind of think. Um, and it seems like that whole school of thinking fits my brain better, or maybe it's just priors, because I was shocked how fast I could pick up like APL code. I can read APL, like basic APL I can read, and any Lisp is like I don't even see the parents now. It's just makes sense, So and same goes with anything that's like a good Hindley Miller type system, Haskell and OCaml or SML. All of these are also like this somehow makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, um, and I'm going to be talking about my workflow, which funnily I have not been able to adopt LLMs in my daily workflow. I like typing too much, I think, and it's just funny. It's just like hardwired into my process. So um, I've stuck with the and I also have a tendency to avoid dependencies and stick with things that are available out of the box. So my dev workflow is almost entirely built around everything that's available in the Clojure standard library and the like out of the box tooling. I don't write Clojurесcript because I don't really need to write single page applications. So like most of my work is server side or like JVM Clojure, and that's why my talk is called the grug-brained dev workflow because I just I'm the println guy. Yeah, so that's me.
Thank you so much. And Brian, your friend is with us.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Didn't
I can mute myself.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, great. So we'll have very brief community updates, and then we will start with the talks by Kapil and Addie. And um, and Yarko is here with us. Yarko, we were just introducing ourselves, so if you wish to say something about yourself, it is just the perfect moment if you wish to introduce. Hi, hello.
Yeah, hi. I was just heading for a walk. Yeah, I'm Jerkka Saltila from Finland, and yeah, I've been playing with Clojure for maybe 10 years, programmed for maybe 14, 15, something like that. And I'm freelancer, working with web stores and web applications mostly. And yeah, came to do more stuff with Clojure recently, last year or two, regarding data science related projects where I found that it's a really nice tool. And yeah, been using Emacs for 10 years. That's my favorite, while it is breaking a bit every once in a while. And yeah, interested to hear what kind of tools you are introducing and presenting here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jarko. And yeah, we're just in the beginning, just introducing ourselves. Hello, Chris. Thank you for making it. And if you wish, Chris, we were just all, saying something about ourselves. So if you wish, you may say something, even though some people here know you very well. Hey, oh, you're on mute.
Hey guys. Yeah. Hey Addie. Hey Kapil.
Thank you.
It's been a while. It's been a while. I haven't I've been sort of following Unravel, and yeah, Addie, like we've had a couple of chats about stuff. So what I'm just thinking. So I'm an ex-colleague of both Daniel, Kapil and Addie. Daniel, I like in Madlan, and then Kapil and Addie from HelpShift. Been doing Clojure for a long time. I've been a little bit let's say controversial, but hopefully I've learned to keep my mouth shut a little bit less, more. And now I'm just So for the past 7 years, I've been on and off building a project called Stats Trade, which is a essentially it's just an order book, but it's got some really interesting properties, where I built it with Clojure, but the actual deployed code is not like Clojure. Yeah, it just compiles into all sorts of different languages, and yeah, like from a tech point of view, I thought I was so brilliant. I couldn't sell the thing, but yeah, and so for the past, let's say 2-3 years, I've really been understanding the sales process, and I think as developers, a lot has changed, with AI. It has changed a lot, so I'm very curious to see what you guys, Kapil, Addie, how you guys have adapted, and and are continuing your journey as like devs. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, for making it. I'm sorry about the time zone confusion. And yeah, and so this kind of reunion is something I'm so glad about. I've been hearing from Chris for years about the old stories 10 years ago where you were all in the same place. So now it is an opportunity to kind of meet the team after hearing those stories. And yeah, hello, Gunnar. Gunnar, thank you for joining us. We're just introducing ourselves, telling a little bit about ourselves. If you wish to say something, Gunnar. And
yeah, hi everybody. Sorry for being late. I'm actually not working in any Clojure project, but it's my favorite language, and I'm just tinkering a bit with it or practicing. I have to work in projects with JavaScript and Java.
yeah,
Anything
thank you so
else
much.
you want to know? I've really share with you.
Yeah, really, thank you for joining. And I think yeah, it was just perfect timing where everybody introduced themselves. And in a moment, we will begin with the talks by Kapil and Addie. I will just share a little community update as we usually do in these meetings. And really briefly, you see my screen in a moment, right? So this is a Cycloj website where we discuss our community and different projects that we collaborate on. And probably most people know that you can see the calendar or events here, and also the different groups. And right, so a few of these are active these days. This today is the visual tools group, and there is the AI group that will meet a little more in the coming weeks. And now there is a new thing, and that is the macro expand gatherings. And the hope creating this new series of gatherings of macro expand is that we will start thinking together different Clojurians of different use cases and different fields. We'll start thinking together about how to help Clojure expand to new use cases, new domains, how to make it more friendly and more open. And this is something that will begin in the coming weeks. And at the moment, there is this poll here where one can, mark, the availability in certain dates, but also the interests and where one can be involved. Like, for example, somebody may be involved in academia and may be able to share their experience, and so on. So to anybody listening to our recording, it is a good time to start these broader meetings and discussions. And I'm glad today we have a few community organizers in the call, conference organizers, and so on. So maybe afterwards we can chat about that. And I'll stop sharing now, and we will begin in a moment. Does anybody have any thought or comment before we have the talks? Yeah, great. So I'll just remind you, it is a public recording, and before making it public, we can edit, we can remove. So if anybody thinks we should remove anything, just let me know. And yeah, and let us begin with Kapil's talk.
All right. So, like, the title of my talk was Vibe Coding with Clojure and Clojurесcript. I understand after giving the title that vibe coding is a very controversial name these days on social media. But I like just try to give it like definition according to me. It's like a very loose term right now. People have given it a lot of meaning, so it's a very overloaded thing. But just before beginning, I'll just set a bit of context so you kind of know my journey. I'll kind of switch between slides and some demos. It's mostly a journey of my like coding with LLMs from 2023 up till now. What has changed, what has worked, what has not worked. So it's kind of like an experience report. Some things might fail, which they usually do in demos. So please bear with me. But the idea of this demo is just to share my workflow and kind of have the discussion around it, because there will be like many use cases around the same workflow or many questions. This is me, founder at Unravel.tech. A few things about me. I've been writing Clojure for most of my professional career. I'm building AI systems for enterprises at Unravel.tech. Unfortunately, that's not something that I can demo or workflow here, maybe for some other day. And apart from programming, I really enjoy visual storytelling. This is something that I do whenever I can. And this is also like related to all the demos that we'll do. Again, disclaimer, vibe coding was just a marketing title. I do mean like this is meant for programmers and not for non-programmers. And I'll get to why like these patterns have worked for me. This is kind of like my character data graph. This is, if you guys are into an RPG, you know this. So like very strong on like backend side, somewhat security because you have to deal with security teams. Not so much at design, very low. Where we had a kick-ass DevOps team, so very low on DevOps. So this is my starting point. And in 2023, I also was fun employed. I really love the term Addie, so I'm going to use that whenever I can. And here I was in mountains near Dharamshala. I was bored, and everyone around me was bored of playing the same board games. So I came up with a game called Unreal Cards. All the cards that you see are creations from Midjourney, and it's a Clojurесcript game. Most of the state and the logic is in the browser. I didn't want to spend money on running backend servers, so it's kind of like a Clojurесcript heavy state machine, and it just communicates with other Clojurесcript state machines via WebSockets and WebRTC. Cool little insight on WebRTC. Internet was not that great in the mountains, so we used to just connect to a Wi-Fi and play on WebRTC, and we didn't need a backend at all. But how did I get here? Because I was this person, very low on front end, very low on design chops. This was the basic UI. It worked out of the box with mobile browsers also. It had QR code, everything, like it had all the batteries included. Again, just a reminder, this was the starting point. So with this was the start of like ChatGPT, like things were just trying to pick up, and this helped me like kind of level up in front end and design thanks to LLM. And this brings us to workflow number 1. You do something in browser, you copy it to the editor, and you're back to your REPL workflow. You're trying to update your UI and do the things there. But there was one more problem. As I said, I wanted to like have some way of all these browsers talk to each other, and I didn't want to pay much for the backend, but you still need a WebSocket server. And I thought, okay, I'll do AWS Lambda, which is like your serverless offering from AWS. I wrote it in Clojure. Unfortunately, that's not the best choice if you know AWS Lambda, because you're running a jar and the startup time is included in your costs, right? I don't want to pay money. So workflow number 2, which I realized quickly, was transpiling. This is a very small, like all broadcast thing that I wanted to do. So I just converted my Clojure code into Python, and this had no like game logic, nothing. It was just doing broadcast on a particular room that you join, and all the logic, as you can see, there's a browser host box. That's where the logic was. This helped me a lot, but again, all of this is just you are going to browser, copying something, pasting it in your editor, trying it out, right? Not the best place, but still you can get around it, and you still get some effects of positive effects of using LLMs, because you're not great at some skills. I also got some help deploying to AWS itself, because I didn't know. So I just used to talk to ChatGPT and ask it that, okay, what next works now? So this is pretty standard. This, I think everyone has done this to certain extent. But the main thing here is get everything that you are doing to a REPL really fast is my realization, because you are creating some boilerplate, some initial setup with help of AI. It might not be great. It was not great in 2023, but the idea was to get into REPL. Just to show you what I mean by this is, most of the code that I have written myself is in Clojurесcript, and is this bit, which is purely without the side effects. This is just a bunch of co-racing channels which are pushing state, and they're expecting the next state to be there. I'm not even worried about the UI. So I'm kind of isolating everything and kind of delegating the parts I'm not good at, which is UI and design, to LLMs. Which brings us to interesting insight here is your shape of data and your interfaces are a good starting point to kind of get what you want out of a LLM, right? Here, my interface was the data type. What I was rendering was this part. So if you see update game footer or update show rules, these are the parts that are implemented by LLM, because I'm not that great at it, but I really want control over the game state machine. This is the part I'm looking at. So this is like great. You can start your projects from scratch now, and the intention is to get to a REPL really fast. This still holds true. Now the tools that we are looking at have improved. It was ChatGPT in later parts of 2024. Now you have tools like Lovable, Bold. So if you are a backend engineer who wants to create funky apps, you can do that, and you can still have a backend where you are like managing your state and making everything which is tightly controlled. The second thing you can also do is you can transpile things, like you can write something in a language that you know, and then convert it into a language that is better for deployment and just reducing costs. All right, moving on to 2024. This was year of edit. So far we were like just good at creating new projects from scratch, right? And that was great, but that's not always the case that you want to do. This was the second game I created. So this is my favorite side projects category, creating online games. And now LLMs have gotten better. You can do, I think following on Twitter also, you can see there is a trend of a lot of people creating 3JS games. This has become again ridiculously simple because you get a lot of mileage out of just a simple prompt. Another good thing, which I think drives the point for Addie's talk, is 3JS is a single dependency. It does not like complicate the dependency part. So you can just create a lot of things out of a simple library. So this was our initial workflow, but now this is a new workflow. So if you know, there's a tool called Adder. There are lots of tools that let you edit and create LLM assisted code, but this is one that gives you control, and it kind of easier to wrap your head around of how software development works. So it's a command line tool. There is a nice mode called watch mode. And what it does is it is just watching all your files, and all you have to do is go into your editor and tell it things in comment block. So you can say AI explain what main function does. Now, a very simple query, but just to drive the point what it does. Now it is processing my request, and it is going to kind of read this and add a comment, and it has just updated that inline. You can do the same thing for almost anything. I have, this is an old game. This is from 2023. I have used the same workflow for updating tests. And again, my intention is to be as close as REPL as fast as possible. So I'm still in my editor, and it is kind of like pair programming with the AI, and you're kind of accessing REPL and verifying those things. So you can say, look at this state machine that I have created for my game, and do you see any edge cases? And it'll try to do a good job of it. You'll create a commit, and then you can verify things on your REPL, and that's like a very fast feedback cycle compared to like doing these things in browser, copying it and doing it. You are doing everything inside your editor. So that's workflow number 3. But like we have more. We have year of 2025 where we have year of MCP. MCP, if you don't know, is a protocol being popularized and introduced by Anthropic. It's a way of your LLM to be able to talk to external tools. They are called MCP servers. This is where things get really exciting for me. So far, what we have seen is, okay, you can kind of run a command line utility called Adder, which is basically talking to a LLM, and then it's kind of updating your files. Then you can verify with it on your REPL, and then you update your UI. This is, by the way, all the workflows that I've shown are relevant for Clojurесcript. You can replace UI with backend and it still stays the same. But what if LLM can directly access a REPL? Okay, then you can ask it directly to verify things on its own. That are you doing the right thing? Can you like just check the namespace if it has the function? Can you check the state of your Clojurесcript app right now at this moment instead of the code? Because you can just like deref the atom and check what's inside it. So this is very fresh. I got it working just today. So all your MCP interactions are only supported on app called Claude Desktop. It is not available on web. So what I've done here is I have integrated a Clojure NREPL server with the Claude Desktop app, and that server is basically a Shadow CLJS project. Let me just move this. Okay, so I had asked it to draw a rectangle. Let's ask it to draw a circle. Big circle, center of the page. This is the part I'm not sure if it'll work, but let's see what happens. So it has actually figured out what it needs to do to talk to the actual running REPL. in the previous conversation, if you're wondering how it has figured out which REPL to talk to, the port and everything, in the previous conversation, I have told it that I'm running a REPL on this port. And it has figured out that, okay, the code that I need to run to draw a circle is this. And it has done it successfully. Right now, it is just doing writes, but you can also think about this as like a inspecting mechanism of your running state. This helps you write better test by LLM because now it has a way to inspect the runtime. So this is a very exciting space that we should be on lookout for. Just integrating MCP servers with Clojure ecosystem has a lot of implications. I'll keep everyone posted about this part. This also helps my workflow because now I can just offload a lot more work. So far, I was just able to offload work in the editor via Adder, but I can just do like debugging work also via REPL, via the LLM, not myself. So this part becomes even more stronger and more off the charts. So that's about it. This is my workflow for almost anything. I am like, I am at a point where just like Google or Stack Overflow, I need this tool to be a productive engineer now. So like, I think that says a lot about like how effective these things are. This is mostly a personal tool so far. I haven't had chance to see this in an action as an impact for a Clojure engineering org. I would like to like hear people's thought on like if they have the experience related to that. How does collaboration work in such setups? And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kapil. And I think it makes sense to have a few brief questions before we continue to Addie's talk. Yeah, and maybe Kapil, you're also planning to give another talk in the coming weeks in the AI group. Maybe would you like to say something about your plans there? Just use this opportunity to say something.
Yeah, sure. So like I said, like when you use Clojure, your next goal is that everyone uses Clojure so you can work in more Clojure companies eventually, and it's like kind of Clojure job security. So one of the problems that Addie and I have been talking about in the Clojure world is one is that there aren't enough Clojure engineers. So we started Clojure workshop in Clojure. We tried to like kind of make that process more seamless. So you have already like a huge learning curve in like understanding the editor, then learning the language, because it's like a completely different paradigm that is not taught in like your traditional education. Another problem that Clojure suffers from is just starting off, like just initializing your project and getting started. For a new engineer, for somebody who doesn't know Clojure world, takes time. So I call it the Ruby on Rails problem of Clojure, right? And it will never be there because Clojure ecosystem and the people and the philosophy prefers libraries over frameworks for good reason. And those reasons only become apparent when you are experienced enough, but you still have the onboarding problem. So if you also have thought about it, I have a proposition of like how to use LLMs to solve this problem. So just like all the AI tools that are out there, which is bold, lovable, they are like just creating projects just with a prompt. What if we could like create a tool for Clojure ecosystem, which gives you a boilerplate project, which will say, okay, give me a pedestal project which does these 5 things, and I don't need anything else. That will be like a great start and great onboarding experience for a new Clojure person. So my talk is going to be about exploring that. What does this solution mean, and how do we get there?
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah. Any thoughts by anybody? Any questions to Kapil?
I was wondering, have you had issues with the Adder regarding that as it makes changes to the source file document? how is the application state when you have like a REPL running and state, and you sort of do changes in your source file, as it is, you might leave the state sort of behind from what is evaluated. That would be interesting to hear, like how you have in that scenario worked with these tools.
Yeah, that could be a problem. It's kind of like pair programming with somebody who's updating the source code, but you also need to keep track of REPL, right? So it's not completely on autopilot, and you need to make sure that you are evaluating the source code by yourself. The MCP server kind of fixes that by saying that, okay, like you update the state in REPL also while you're updating the source code. Yeah, but that's a really good question. That's a very common problem with like updating Clojure and not updating REPL.
Yeah, and it's different compared to Python or PHP or these where at least programs are just the source files and they are sort of run like if you're not running like some specific type of system. Yeah.
Sorry, Kapil. I've funny thing is I've only just heard of MCP like today. So could you just sort of like give me a bit of like overview about what it is?
Maybe I can just pull out a architecture diagram. Yeah, I'll just share my screen again. So basically, problem with like any LLM is that it just has the compressed knowledge of all the knowledge it has consumed at a point, right? And training LLMs is expensive, and sometimes you don't even need to do that because you just want like the current state of things. So imagine like your LLM wants to know what was your last order when you ordered Uber or ordered some food, right? That shouldn't be part of the LLM. So it's kind of saying that the same thing a RAG implementation does. It's kind of doing some search and looking up and saying that, okay, here's the extra knowledge that I have of the world. You take this and process this request, right? And this has been done with RAG and other implementation and vector databases. But what Anthropic suggests is, what if we can have a pluggable system where you can kind of add these external sources in a standardized way, right? And that standardized way is MCP. So you can declare your different tools. Let's say you want your Claude to draw diagrams in a particular way. You can expose a server which just does mermaid renderings or some specific format that you want it in. So you can say, okay, you have this tool at your disposal. You can call it whenever you see it fit, and it will call that. The same way we are just exposing NREPL as an endpoint and saying that, okay, I am giving you a problem statement. If you see fit that connecting to NREPL and evaluating a few things will help you, go and do it.
At one point, what I noted, there was servers and events. The HTTP protocol was used with some part of that. And if I understood it right, because WebSockets are much harder to go through firewalls and stuff like that. Would it be so that they are using this so people can hook up their like home stuff more easily to this?
So right now, all of this is running on my machine, and the interface it is using is stdio, stdout. So what Claude Desktop is doing is just calling a command line utility, and that command line utility's interface is stdio, stdout. That's it.
So would it be possible to have a like an NREPL extension for MCP?
Yeah, that's exactly what I demoed, which just started working. Like quite like roundabout way to do that, but I just got working today.
Like I think for me, and I've had conversations with Daniel about this. Like, you know, it's the way I think one advantage of Clojure is Emacs, or like, you know, being able to work with NREPL in editor. And this is something that like it does not exist in anywhere but for Lisp. And I think so there's like an actual natural fit between, you know, working, let's say, in editor or within a certain environment. Say for example, Blender, right? Like, imagine if like literally like the tooling is right there. Yeah. And if you know, like if there was some sort of a way to go like, you know, here's a button, create, like essentially in Lisp, a piece of code is a button. Like you're literally like writing a button and then you go and like eval and then you've just created like, you know, like a call. So there could be some similar process in various different environments to, you know, not only call Clojure, but to call any LLM environment. And that's so the MCP stuff, it's very interesting.
By the way, there's a Blender MCP server also, which is very famous right now. So LLM can just talk to a 3D editor, and the LLM is constructing a 3D scene just because it can talk to a 3D editor now.
And what are people like? Are people just, it's like typing into a text box and then sending it?
Yeah, they're just saying, just draw me, like just make a toy house in a 3D scene, and then the Claude LLM will figure out what it needs to do with the Blender API to get that done. I will send requests and inspect and do that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, we will have this, you know, we have this series of AI meetings, and probably a few of the coming meetings will be about variations of these topics. And, you know, if anybody listening to this recording wishes to bring their own, you know, experiment or project to these meetings, then it would be good to kind of collaborate on that. And because probably a couple of things are happening and we don't even know about them. And any question about MCP or anything about Kapil's workflow before we continue to Addie's talk? Yeah, maybe Kapil, I'll ask something which is probably very basic. MCP is an open protocol, and so many things are happening, you know, just people creating open source clients and servers and so on. But if I understand correctly, the LLM has some properties that make it work well. Is that right?
Yeah.
So in a way, we are bound to specific LLMs, kind of specifically of a specific company at the moment, which are supporting this for now.
Yeah. So basically the property that the LLM has, which makes it better at this, is called tool calling. So if a LLM can perform well at tool calling, which basically means that it realizes I need external help and I have these list of tools that at my disposal and I need to call them. LLMs perform differently. Different LLMs perform differently at this task of figuring out that I need to call a tool. And open source LLMs are not that great, or like smaller LLMs are not that great. Anthropic has been really great at figuring it out, but there are other open source LLMs, but they're like slightly bigger, which are good at also tool calling. And there's a benchmark of tool calling also, where like They'll just give a LLM all these tasks that, okay, if I ask you to do this and this is my tool, will you actually call the tool or just do the job on its own? So there's a whole bunch of like these tests in a benchmark. And open source LLMs are always behind the all these closed ones, but they're catching up. So the hope is that you will have eventually a local LLM running, doing all the cool things that Claude Desktop also does.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, many thanks, Kapil, for this talk. I think for a few of us, it did add lots of clarity for things we are still confused about. And probably now we can move to Addie's talk, and then afterwards we can have a discussion together about everything.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. So Addie, if you wish, we can begin.
Yep. Let me just share my screen. Share. Advanced. Portion? No. Basic. Why do they change the... okay. Yeah. Is that visible?
Yeah, very nice.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Is it me or is like, has Zoom changed their interface? Like I haven't used Zoom for a while for sharing.
They have.
Most likely.
Yeah. Okay. Is the screen still visible?
No.
Now we see you.
Oh, now you see me. Now you see me. Now you see me too. Okay, I'm going to just reshare my screen. Sorry about this. And this is why you will share. Okay, I hope this works.
Yeah.
It is now.
Yeah, it is now. Okay, fine. Okay, cool. So this my talk is going to be exactly the inverse of Kapil's talk, because I am maybe like as time progresses, I'm shifting back to older and older software and not newer and newer software and fewer dependencies. So like the screen literally is my Emacs, which is about 15 years older than I am, maybe. And that project, so one of the things I want to show in this demo is uh, tricks, tools, and techniques that I use that are not tied specifically to a like Clojure project, not necessarily to a Clojure project, because I want to suggest that these are techniques that one can learn and use for being productive in any. It's limited to a Clojure environment, but also generalizes to notebooks. And I really like notebooks. This is a notebook. This is my org node file, plain text for the win. And this is the source of my blog. So I'm going to like present from the source of my blog itself. And the project name, as you will notice, is something that should scare you away from using the source code for your own blog, because its quality works on my machine. And the whole thing is, I want to rewrite this in Babashka at some point, but it's just 300 lines of bash, and everything is event driven. Like I'm using, where's it gone? iNotify to build my blog and run my blog. So anyway, that's a sidetrack we can go to later. But like in the spirit of like general thinking, this whole bash code base itself is a functional code base. I've used it's entirely event driven. Everything is based on lines of data. So a lot of Clojure principles apply very generally. And I find that these becoming conversant with these ideas, like Clojure is a community of ideas more than of programming languages for me. And if you see, like I feel like the creativity and innovation per square meter equivalent of like whatever is the density of a community, that I feel like it's pretty high in the world of Clojure. Whether it's people building machinery within the core language itself, and then other people building stuff on top of that machinery. So I'm, let me just quickly get into the presentation here. I'm going to banish the side window because it's not really necessary. Oh, one more detail I'll mention is I'm going to use a project I'm going to connect to a REPL which is running inside this directory here, in this particular directory. And it's a deps.eden thing. It's a deps project. And I've got a bunch of aliases. This is how I prefer to connect. I always keep my REPL process separate from my editor process. Because if either of them go bad, then I can, both are stateful things and they have independent state. Like my Emacs has a lot more state than my Clojure REPL, and the Clojure REPL can have a lot more state than my Emacs, but they're different states. So, okay, so I've started the project in here, and just like any other Clojure notebook, I will connect to, wait, let me just banish this. Okay, now it's this full screen. I'm going to cider connect CLJ is going to pick up the like project and the port and whatnot. And this is literally like some org mode text. Okay, it doesn't really matter. But what I wanted to show you is the idea of having a personal workflow that's general enough that it ports to any tool. It's not limited just to Emacs or just to VS Code or not even to org mode. I'm using it in org mode, which is like evidence that I can use it in Clerk or Clay or any of the other notebook kind of environments, as well as in regular source code. Okay, so I'm jumping into the presentation. All of this will get exported, and it'll be available as a slide deck. Very briefly, I think I feel like I'm a walking paradox of mechanical sympathy who's very quickly becoming obsolete because I'm very allergic to dependencies, and I have half a slot of working memory. So I have to write to think. Like I can't, it's almost impossible for me to do like I do a huge amount of long range thinking. Like I've implemented cloud data centers, like private, like small scale, but end-to-end stuff, or like 5-6 months. But I need to write. If I don't write, so in that sense, I'm like an LLM who forgets all the time, who has to keep getting fed context. And so writing is the way I do it. And on the other side, LLMs generate so much output that sense of what's going on. So that's it's a impedance mismatch coming from both sides. So anyway, I really like the creative stuff that's being done with LLM tech. I think a huge amount of it is overblown because people want to make money off of it and whatnot, which is not a problem in principle, but the way a lot of people are doing it is not something that I am happy about. And personally, like, again, this is my bias that writing for nerds is far more valuable than vibe coding for nerds. And this is like my little shell joke that this is also a redirect. If you get good at writing, then you're also going to get good at vibe coding because your interface to the LLM is a text prompt. And the more structured your thinking is, the better you are able to craft your input, the better the LLM is going to behave. So this is not even like a joke. This is actually honestly what I believe. And I hope that this is what will save me in the end. If I keep writing better, maybe LLMs, for me, the ideal use of an AI or any other tool is that I don't even have to think about it. It's just there in the background. I don't have to think about a new prompt. I don't have to like actively engage with it, because that's where, for me, for my brain, that's where the point of friction arrives. So the rest of this talk is basically cultivating muscle memory. I'm here in all of these places. I blog at eval apply. Some people are jealous of the domain name. I'm very happy that I snagged it. I've got a bunch of talks up here. This is my code and professional networking stuff. So I wanted to highlight the Enclojure community and conference that I helped organize with Nid is also here on the call. I see Nid has been was a partner at Nilenso who has been like a forever sponsor of Clojure. And Ned has been like an organizer for many, many years. Kapil and I helped organize a few times as well. And these are the projects that the workshops that we've written. They are MIT licensed. You can just use them. However, oh wow, is this my screen? Just give me a second.
Everything looks fine.
Browser right now.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's your browser.
Okay. Cool. Because I'm seeing a bunch of disturbances here. Okay, I'll just continue with however it is. Yeah, and then yeah, so that's my blog. I've got a bunch of blog posts up there, and in the vein of like mechanical sympathy, Kapil, what Kapil has suggested is actually another lens into this problem of dependencies in the Clojure ecosystem, I think. And LLMs might actually be a pretty good solution to what would I say? Hey, give me a second. There's a lot of. I'm just going to unplug one external monitor and hope everything works just as it is.
Yeah, sure. Would you like me to stop the recording for a moment? Or
No, it's fine. Like I said, this is all demo. Is my screen still visible?
No, we've lost it.
Oh, you've lost it? Okay, cool. I shall open Zoom and reshare it. Wow. Presenting. What went wrong with this thing? Sorry, I'm just going to bounce and join again. I don't know what. It's not showing me the share screen.
Yeah, it is nice to have breaks. Yeah.
Hey, Brian, thank you for sharing the link of that benchmark.
I was just trying to find more on tool integration for LLMs, which was just seems to open up amazing possibilities when you start thinking about it. If these LLMs begin understanding the capabilities of, well, maybe other LLMs. I may have underestimated just the speed at which things are evolving.
Yeah.
Just to fill in the silence, Chris. So when you were talking about speaking up, my first thought is being able to speak up at the appropriate time is a superpower. You just need to use it with wisdom. So with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think actually going back to the whole LLM thing, I feel like okay, yeah, I had this question, right? I'm like and to everyone is like, how like before because I'm a big fan of testing code. Now like you literally just write like tell the LLM, hey, I'm write this for me, and then the LLM might spit out say 5 or 6 functions. You just go copy and paste, put it in there. How do you know whether the LLM has spit out like good testable code, and B, like how do you go about testing that code?
Well, I think the key point there is you depending on your organization, hopefully you have some good solid requirements that you're working from. And so in that scenario, the first thing I would do is to try to make sure that those requirements you have match the code. Because ultimately, from my perspective, having worked in the organizations I have, my ultimate responsibility has been to the business and make sure that the code that I'm writing fits the needs that they have. So, I mean, for me, that's kind of the first thought I have. Following after that, I would think, getting an idea of test coverage. I would think the LLM will do a pretty good job at the coverage, but it's not something I've actually done myself, right? I haven't gotten to the point where I've used LLMs in that fashion. So I would think their test coverage is pretty good, but trust, verify, right? Trust but verify. Those are my initial
So
thoughts.
there's a really interesting article, a post by Stephen Yigi, or yeah. Anyway, so and it's called Revenge of the Junior Developer, and I was laughing at that because it's like, yep, I think a junior developer can get something quicker, better, faster than me. And like, cool, like, great. So I do feel like a bit of a dinosaur. And yeah, it's just funny. It's like, for me, it's like, I think in some ways it's great, but in other ways, if there is no discipline in managing the code, like I don't know how many times I refactored code, so I'm very aware of how to say, even name the damn thing. So for me, names are really important, and like calling, so I don't know. You go like spit out this function, it'll spit out something, and then you go spit out another function, and might call it the same thing, might call it different. Like, you just don't know because it's the LLM doing it. So again, like, maybe I might be like an old, thing complaining about it, but these are some of the problems I see in terms of building big systems, or maybe like we don't need big systems anymore because AI does everything.
Yeah, let us return to that, and now we can, I think, continue with Addie, if that's okay. Yeah, thanks so much. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, I think you are on mute, Addie. Oh, I think. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, every time I figure out my live demo system, something messes me up always. And this time I think it was a second display with a different refresh rate than my main display. So the second display was fine. My main display, which I'm using to present, started, ragging. Anyway, so back to the presentation. There's a bunch of places where I'm online. I'm using, again, like, just to point back to bring the topic back to the idea of using whatever is available out of the box. I've been, for some reason, obsessed about web projects and SaaS applications. And I want to build everything inside one repo itself. And so I built like a little workflow of mine built around just the deps.eden. I won't go over this right now, but I just wanted to point it out. Because one of the problems that happens with having multiple applications being built from the same project is you want to develop them, maybe 2 or 3 of them at the same time. And that means you have to connect to the REPL, and then you have to have like have to know which REPL you're connected to, etc. So I basically wrapped around the REPL itself, like the cider REPL itself, and made it print stuff for me. And that's another lead into the fact that the REPL itself is machinery that is user accessible. The read, the eval, the print phases are all like modifiable by us. And learning a little bit about that can also help do things that you might not otherwise be able to do in most other programming environments. Okay, so this is also a sales pitch for org mode and notebooks. Like I said, I like Clay and any other person who's making notebooks in the world of Clojure. So I get, basically this is a source block, which is collapsible, which gives me syntax highlighting. And I can open it in another editor context. I've opened it in a separate pane where I can evaluate against. Is this working? Yeah. Okay. So you see, it evaluated, and the reason it evaluated was at the beginning of this talk, I connected to the REPL, which I had started over here in my terminal. Okay. And then let me just prove it to you. So echo handler, right? Echo handler is here, available here. We are talking to the same REPL. And I can basically do whatever I want, run a main function, blah, blah. And just to go over some like standard things, we use these comment forms called rich comment forms, humorously named by, I think, who do you remember who named it? I think Sean Caulfield. Sean Caulfield started calling these rich comment forms because I love putting these in pretty much every namespace. So let me start a REPL, the server against my REPL, and stop the server just to see if it stops. Is it running? Yeah. Yeah, okay, it started. Let me stop it. Is it stopping? Let's see. It's on. It's not stopping for some reason. I don't know why. Oh, wait. Okay. I might have evaluated the form inside and not the def, but I have evaluated the def. Yeah, this okay, whatever. I don't know why. Right. So the first thing I want to point out is this basically is my workflow. I like to start with really, really small bits of code, get really bare bones bits of my application working, and immediately start interacting with them, with inline evaluation. Any notebook that supports this kind of workflow is especially good for Clojure development. The liveness is very important. I know this is like really table stakes for most people on this thing. But I'm going to quickly build on it. So like I said, I evaluated curl. Yep. So it printed results to me, but that's not so interesting. What I can actually do is, because this is returning Eden, right? I can say do the curl thing and pipe it and give me some headers. Okay, so this is why I love org mode, because it is a polyglot environment. And it lets me experiment with all sorts of things. Now, in this case, CLG HTTP was already included in my deps.eden here. Okay, from where's it gone? Yeah, because I included the deps, the dev alias when I started my REPL. It included this extra dep, which is why I have it in my user context. And then I can do this same thing. And why is it? Okay, I had to require this and call this. Yeah. Boom. All right. Okay. So again, this is returning a Eden map. The results are cached inline. So like once I test this endpoint, I don't have to go back to it again. And you see the beauty of the system is it is interactive. It is live interactive, interacting with the Clojure REPL, which is started as a separate entity. This is another reason why I like to keep my REPL context separate from my editor context, because it lets me like I could open maybe VS Code or some other, like my primary dev environment could be VS Code or IntelliJ, and I'm also, let's say, an org mode user, so I'm using org mode and Emacs, and I have this live notebook connected to the same REPL context and evaluating within the same REPL context. So there are reasons why you might want to do it. For example, running these sort of queries, which you can then export as live documentation, live user documentation that is part of the project itself. And if I'm version controlling things, then I can, if I made updated an API, added like, narrative description in my live document and a test for it, I can commit that whole thing as one unit. And again, these things, I think they just they just enhance people who are using LLM workflows, because LLMs benefit from rich context. And if you're able to, just make rich context, produce rich context as a side effect of just your development workflow, that thing is going to provide feedback and be able to do things. So one use case that I might use LLMs for is summarizing. I've not really used them so much, but I can imagine using them for summarizing. And I think this sort of basic, like a bunch of habits that one picks up, I think these will fit well. These will gel well. These will compose well with even LLMs or even with any other kinds of tools that might come in the future. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is that the standard library, this again has been covered by a bunch of tutorials, but it's worth going over. The standard library has a lot already available. So I've actually used this in a case where like I had to move onto a Kotlin. I was working on a server-side Kotlin project, and I was having real difficulty like figuring out what data is, moving from where to where. And so I was trying to use debug, IntelliJ, Kotlin's REPL, all of that stuff didn't really work for me until I built, I exported that project as a library into my local M2 and fired up a bare Clojure project using that as a dependency, and then just use reflection to see what's going on over there. Okay. So let me code this. Okay. Result value. Two modes, right? So again, what the reflector is doing is it's looking at the object, this server object that I started, and it's returning stuff, blah blah whatnot. Now, one of the problems is that when results become really big, they become hard to inspect. So you might want to use, if you're just in a REPL context, then you might want to use Clojure pprint, which is going to pretty print the results for you like this. But even nicer can be, again, so this is like a series of progressions. You might want to go into an editor, and the editor might itself help you print stuff better. So I'm going to get rid of the pprint, and I'm going to use my Cider pretty printer. Right, so I pretty printed it's this result in a separate buffer, which is like I can't edit it. So the nice thing about this, it's a feature in my opinion. The nice thing about this is I can't edit it, so accidentally I can't mess with anything. Yeah, it also seems to be like great for your career, because my CTO was, when I was doing this with the Kotlin project, my CTO walked behind me and he was like amazed at what I was doing. Like he had never seen anybody, rip apart like a Java application, because it's just a jar, right? Like this. And I was like, he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm figuring out what this application does and blah and whatnot. And incidentally, yeah, so the beauty of it was this application was written with Arrow KT, which is a Haskell-like type system, advanced type system that you can bolt onto Kotlin. And I was still able to, REPL through it. So it's and I don't think I would have been able to do that if I was not oriented this way. That let me find the dumbest, stupidest way of examining this, blob, right? And I love that. Like I love being able to do that. Then again, this stuff, tap is also like great because it's part of your system. Let me just evaluate these things. Evaluate. I'm not going to explain what tap does, but basically think of it as a way to splice in between a stream of data, which is like a pipeline of data, which is inside your application, and then lift out a value and put it somewhere. So tap is for me lifting out values and putting it in this atom, responses atom, and then I can see what the atom is giving me. So you can imagine, let's say if I, instead of tapping a value, if I end up tapping a stream, then it's it's going to keep, like this thing is going to keep conjuring the response into the stream, and I'm going to be able to observe it. People talk a lot about observability. This is like, imagine being able to connect to a live production system in a read-only mode and then tap values, right? This kind of observability you won't get with logging or with any other method of um, yeah. So again, just these hand skills, they sort of help in other environments. Now, what else is available? There's Clojure pprint. Let's say I want to okay, before that, let me just
Adi, I'll
yeah,
stop for a moment maybe and just say that we have 5 minutes to
5 minutes.
the
Okay,
official
cool.
time. If you wish to stay longer, it would be amazing to keep talking, but maybe some people will need to leave. So maybe in 5 minutes we stop for a few questions.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up. I'm sorry about that, like
Oh,
break
no,
in the
no,
middle.
no. And we can continue if you
Yeah.
can. Thanks.
Yeah. Also, like I said, all of this stuff is going to be available live on my website, like, and on things that you can link to publicly, the presentation, etc. So anyway, so pprint is there, and it has print table, which is very handy. So now, if you look at responses, where is it gone? Okay. So like the responses are just like this, whatever, sequence of maps that are captured. But what if I want to see these uh, as a table, and I can actually print them and no, okay, yeah. So I can get them as a table. You can also use Clojure inspect, which is a visual inspector. Yes, evaluate it. Oh man. Yeah. So now the same server object, which I had pretty printed with the reflector, I can also inspect as a tree, because again, it's a big, can I increase the, I don't think I increase the font size. So this is just a swing user interface that comes. This is all like, the standard Clojure distribution. I've done nothing special to it. So it's going to let you walk through the entire object tree or whatever it is. So you have a visual inspector also built in. And again, like I said, this is available regardless of your editor. You can do this in IntelliJ or in via VS Code or anything like that. And then you can, the other bits of experimenting with a live environment, ad libs, like all of this stuff has been covered. So I won't cover it again. And yep, I think that's it. Yeah. more or less that's it. So basically, if you go to if you look at, where's it gone? Yeah, if you look at this is my favorite website, Clojure Docs, and I will definitely say look at the Clojure.inspector namespace. Look at ways to export things as CSV. Again, you can use these things to create intermediate information to feed into LLM workflows or whatever it is. It just doesn't, like, my brain doesn't work like that. So whatever obsolescence is near. I showed reflect, I showed pprint. This is the reflector namespace. You can do a whole bunch of things with it. And it's very, very handy. Like you won't need it all the time, but the time you need it, it's like great just to have it out of the box. And I didn't show the REPL namespace, but I use the REPL namespace a lot to surgically remove items, let's say vars from my live environment with ns unmap, or remove aliases or blah and whatnot. Like these things become very useful to have in your muscle memory. And yeah, that's more or less what I wanted to say. So my sales pitches use everything that you can from the standard library and the out of the box tooling, and then trust that it's going to compose with other things like your um, like any other mechanical system can feed on top of this, including you hacking your own tools using, let's say, the basis generated by your deps.eden, your Clojure deps system, all the way up to your own custom metadata formats that you inject into vars, and then suddenly your LLMs become closer to AGI, and like that whole spectrum and in between. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that's great inspiration to see everything, working in harmony. And yeah, I hope to ask many questions now. I'm not sure if we have time. And I since now we are around the official time, I'm proposing that maybe we'll take a couple of brief questions to Addie for if anybody needs to go soon. And then for those who can stay longer, we can keep talking. And maybe Addie, if you wish to show a little more, then it would be great. And yeah, any question to Addie about anything, org mode or reflection and so on?
Yeah, this might be one of the reasons I'll come back to org mode, Adi.
Yeah, because I can see, like, if you're using instructor, for example, then instructor, if you, and I mean, you'll have to use, like, org has this way of passing return values from one code block to the other code block. So you could potentially, it's like very arcane, no web syntax, it's like horrible, but it does its job. Okay, and it works.
Yeah.
So you could potentially do, like, your MCP could itself be like one single org file, passing context from here to there, right? But then you're using instructor CLJ, which is letting you express everything as Eden. If you need to do like on the fly munging of your intermediate data map, then you can just stick in, pipe it to Babashka and do whatever you want, and then send it down the pipe. Yeah, those kind of things you can possibly do with and I really have to say that I've tried, for example, Jupyter. I've tried even Clerk. Clay I'm experimenting with a little. I have not found another notebook system, even though it's so crafty. Like org mode is very crafty. Like I've had one org file. I use it as my SQL workbench also, by the way. Okay, so I've had one org file with Clojure, a REST client, Bash code, Python, ZB, no, not ZB, this thing, Data, which is a diagramming system. And just for kicks, I threw in APL also, because I wanted to show people that, yeah, you can use APL in this, using this interface. And I've actually, like, for real work, I've used it. And again, like, the machinery bit sticks out to me, because all it's doing is it's calling out to a process outside. It's shelling out. And that's why it composes in a very Unix tool like way with any other tool that you throw at it. So
yeah.
So I really appreciate, this machinery stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions to Addie?
What sort of dependencies you would say that you are trying to get rid of still, or some sort of like this edge where you are currently going there as you are reducing kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So for example, I mean, one can't get rid of all dependencies, but the way I like to do it is, if I pull down a dependency, then I'd like it to be as generally useful as possible. So for example, my system has pandoc on it already. And I'd rather use pandoc to compile org mode to HTML, because again, I don't want I'm going back to the way my blogging system works. I write everything in org mode, but I don't want the publishing system to be Emacs. I don't want that to be hardwired to Emacs, because that, I don't know, I just don't like it. I prefer it to be, although you can even run Emacs as a standalone, like a command line utility, and use that as an org exporter and whatnot. I just ended up using pandoc because it's really good at multiple formats. And when you're publishing a website, you might have ASCII docs somewhere, you might have LaTeX, you might have all sorts of data input sources, but the output is HTML. That's what you want. And so pandoc gives me a lot of control. And so, yeah, so pandoc is a dependency that I like, but Clojure is not a dependency I want in that pipeline, like in the middle of that whole workflow. And Emacs is also not a dependency I want there, right? Clojure I could use if it's Babashka. So if it's a BB script that fits into a shell pipeline, then it's fine, because it is not a hardwired requirement. I can like lift it out and then put something else in between. So dependencies that are that have the property of composing, that are data oriented, that I can swap out at will with like custom software. Those are the kind of dependencies I prefer. And I like them to be as general purpose as possible. Like this whole workflow show, right? Org mode lets me interface with Clojure in a certain way that the Clojure, like a standard Clojure project itself, doesn't. So I don't know. I mean, that's like a strange answer, but yeah. I wrote about my philosophy in the the SiteMaker project. I'm just dropping the link in here.
Yeah, it's I had an experience recently after, yeah, Clojure was the first Lisp for me, but I recently been learning to use this PHP Lisp, which is much more experimental.
Right.
So there, you don't have the standard library of Clojure even. So it's been really interesting also to port certain things from the standard library that you realize that those are important from the get-go.
Yeah. And so actually one of the contrasting things for me is like Clojurесcript, for example. I love the language and I love what we can do. If I have to build a single page application, I love the fact that we have these, infinite undo data oriented ways of working with single page front ends. But the trade-off is that you have to buy into the Google Clojure compiler. You have to buy into the externs system. Like it just comes with that. And if someone wants to build a quote unquote traditional normal website with Clojurесcript, that's not the easy path, or that's not the paths that everybody takes, right? So dependencies also have this gravity well of like pulling you down a certain path and then not letting you escape at all. And then it takes some real expertise. Like you have to understand the NPM ecosystem. You have to understand how you can organize your project so that parts of it are like a single page application, and then parts of it are your regular, you use HTMX or just plain JavaScript or server-side rendered stuff. But then just the conceptual overhead of the amount of stuff that gets pulled down is like huge. And yeah, and the other bit about dependencies is that the more stuff we add, the more like fragile the overall system becomes. The paths to catastrophic failure, the number of pathways explode, because I think that's just the nature of how things are when you compose things, or when you just like put all sorts of systems together.
And even if like things don't go wrong, you still have to upgrade libraries, right?
Yeah, in my opinion, that's things going wrong, because if you have to upgrade a library, then something's gone wrong.
Yeah. Security is like something that goes wrong, even if it's like you've done everything right.
Like so many supply chain attacks have happened just because the
Log4j.
pace of it's the forced march, right? Like you have to update everything. You have to do it.
Yeah. Do you guys remember
Otherwise,
Log4j?
yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
Yeah, but see, in our projects, our fix was maybe like 1 line, 2 line, or whatever. I think we were waiting for the details of the RC to come out and mitigation information available. But the ultimate fix wasn't that painful, because it was Java and Clojure dependencies and whatnot. So I don't think it was as
No.
painful as.
We had to update databases also, because some databases depend on Log4j.
Okay. Yeah, right. But I'm saying from
And
the
Jenkins.
application point of view, from the Clojure application point of view, I don't think we had that much of a problem.
Yep.
Log4j was like, it was everywhere. So I mean, the surface area was big, but yeah.
I would have a question, maybe more for Kapil, and related, well, generally like a web app or application development question, and related to the LLMs and this Ruby on Rails problem, sort of. It's something I just experimented with Django this weekend, and made a clone of a social bookmarking service that's I've used this digo.com, and it's been a bit on live support for a long time already. So it was very nice that I was able to build like the backend and the database model and importer and these things in a couple of days with that as a base. So I'm exploring in and while I'm building some like more how you would say more narrow or special little tools with Clojure, I would be interested in how well the stacks you are building with Clojure and your setups, how well you can sort of maybe you get the idea what I'm trying to ask, like how far can you get before the things get wonky with the LLMs, and what kind of methods you use to sort of direct it, as it is sort of every Clojure developer sort of has their own web framework in a sense. So what kind of methods you use regarding that?
Okay, so I think there are different parts to this question. One of it is like I'll just pick on Django for a bit, because there's a lot of insights there as well. That with our experiment, we have done experiments not just with Clojure projects, but we have done with Django and like Fast API. What we have realized very fast is libraries and frameworks which do implicit things, and they are used to generate like a big LLM, like project using LLM. They're hard to debug just by the nature, because they're like doing a lot of implicit things, and it's very hard to get your head around.
Yeah, for the like Rails, for what I understand, is more of the implicit, and Django is more explicit, like convention over configuration and configuration over convention. Yeah.
And even more explicit is Fast API, which is like doesn't have ORM. It's just doing its thing, right? So in that spectrum, Clojure is like, by just the nature of design choices, Clojure wins in that department, because Clojure ecosystem has gotten that right even before LLMs arrived. That okay, we don't want to deal with complexity. We want to deal with explicit things. We want to deal with libraries. So that's a great headway that we have made already, right? What problem you mentioned about having like tens of different frameworks, right? One potential problem that I'm going to propose in the talk also is kind of like a page rank, right? Libraries which are trusted by really a lot of people and a lot of good contributors will get a better preference. When you say, oh, build me a web framework, mostly a library which is kind of accepted by the community will get a better rank. And we are trying to figure out what are the fairer ways of doing this, right? But we also want to be like predictable and stable, right? We just don't want to push a library which has like 20,000 stars and not like push a library which is not does not have those stars, but it's still good. So it's like it's open for discussion, but it will kind of look like something like llms.txt, which is LLM's way of kind of blog posts way of exposing your site to LLMs, just like sitemap.xml was for Google crawlers. So something of that sorts for a Clojure library and Clojure frameworks is what I'm going to propose, which will help the core tool, which is going to use LLMs and all these definitions to come up with an answer that, okay, this is the best way to build a web app, or these are the 5 different ways of building a web app. And of course, the user can like say that, okay, I just want Composer and just build everything with Composer. So it will do that, but defaults will be picked up by these declarations by the library owners and the community.
Yeah,
Hope
like, can
that
I say
answers
something
your
on this?
question.
Like, because I have about 10,000 words of blog posts published and maybe like 100,000 words inside my brain, but because I think there's a huge amount of potential here. Like, I loved Luke Vanderhart's talk at the Conj, where he spoke about RDF and LLMs, like basically stuff that even Kapil is doing. These things, the paradox is that they are marketed as natural language interfaces, but they work so much better with structured input, okay, and structured prompting. So if it's, let's say, an entity attribute value system that is in the middle of orchestrating these workflows, then not only can you have like a mechanical interpreter, but you can also play with something that is really, it's like an amazing search tool. I think of LLMs as very good search tools, which are exploring a search space that you and I won't explore. Like, if we don't explore search spaces that way, because it's exploring, bunch of tokens with its own weighting system and blah blah and whatnot, and the input that we give modifies the weights, which changes the the lens into the corpus, like ultimately whatever it has been trained on. So like, I want to connect this to the idea that we already have machinery, like making, how does, for example, how does a library author participate in this whole knowledge graph that we have? What if they can inject a piece of metadata? Like, metadata is part of the machinery of the standard library. What if they're able to inject structured metadata from outside, like from, in a fairly standard way? Let's say, um, uh, uh, it's like sort of like a micro. If anybody's heard of micro formats, like these iCal type formats, or resume formats, or there's a whole microformats.org website, which is basically like, I think it's a form of RDF. So as long as you have a schema that's well understood, or a popular schema at least, a lot of people will be able to participate in the knowledge graph using that schema. And then something else can come and pull it. Like it could be like a plain old search engine that you stuff. You're able to source metadata by downloading libraries from Maven, from GitHub, from here, from there, from blah blah, wherever it is, and then just stuff that into an Elasticsearch index. Okay, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to give a query interface to solve, let's say, the getting started problem. Somebody who's an expert, a web developer, but comes to Clojure and says that, look, I don't know how to build a web application in this thing. Oh, by the way, I also just want to build an API. Can you help me do this? Right? It's already possible. All someone needs to do is like create a good search index. But like a metadata system, I think you also did something with the for dependencies, right, Kapil? You wrote like a little tool that walks through landing in projects and figures out which service should deploy after which service. Like this is help shift work, I think, right? Yeah. So that was based on like just our own custom data that we munged with like a lining in plugin or something like that. Because our problem was like we have these 30, 40 services, and we had given control over to developers to decide when to ship what. Like I was part of the ops team. Now their problem was they could talk to each other and figure out, oh, my service should actually deploy before your service. But things were still a little bit iffy. So I think you and Vedang and a bunch of other people made that little tool that would tell people that, oh, by the way, this is the dependency chain. And they could do this because, again, because like generic data is a great interface. Generic data also fits into metadata, right? Which is var metadata, or Kindly is doing that stuff, right? Kindly has is offering sort of a Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong. Like I think it's offering this whole standard, this concept of a standard which you can inject dynamically or even statically into your project, and then something else is able to make a lot more sense about the collection of the crazy collection of things that you have, because like Jarko said, everybody's framework is their own framework. Everybody's project is everybody's stack, and I think it's a general problem. It's not just web stacks; it's any stack. You want to build a mobile application, you want to build a data science stack, you want to build, I don't know, anything like a bunch of Babashka scripts talking to each other. They're still stacks. So the problem is very general, and the solution I think is also rooted in something that is general to across all of these things, which is metadata, which is things like being able to calculate a graph. Like Clojure Depths already has a way to calculate basis, right? And it's using just plain data. I don't see a reason why like a namespace key cannot participate in the basis map, and that namespace key maps to a structured format that says that, okay, I would like to participate in the Clojure library graph in this way. You, Mr. LLM, please make sense of it. Right. So anyway, yeah, that's, like I said, I have like about 100,000 words I've not published on these things.
Yeah,
maybe let us stop for a moment. And I really appreciate it that people can stay longer and chat. Maybe what we can do is have a few brief comments or questions, and then Addie will conclude, Kapil will conclude, and then we'll stop recording. And then we can keep going unrecorded, which is kind of nice sometimes. So I think Jarko wanted to say something, and also Chris, I think, wanted to say something. So let us maybe have a few brief comments and then conclude the recorded part. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation. And for also the link you posted, I actually did read this article about the Clojure web app from scratch by Aditya. It was really good. Like I definitely enjoyed it. It's like a very low level, like putting the concepts there together. And it's been something I've been really getting into to really understand the HTTP and like low level stuff. But yeah, thank you.
I was just gonna make a comment on the web apps thing, like I don't know, like these days I find you know, I'm looking at some C# code, and they've done it really well, like just with decorators. So because at the end of the day, you know, any web API is like packaging. So it depends on how many functions you have to package. Like if you're gonna like package like 2 endpoints, well, whatever. If you're gonna package like 1,000, then like you have to have something that can manage that 1,000. So and every language, every you know, every framework that's robust enough to manage that has their own way. With Clojure people, like we tend to like write our own, but you know, sometimes it's better to do something that's
yeah. No, I think there's definitely a big trade-off. Like I think who spoke about this concept of industrial automation? Again, one of the conch talks. This was I forget his name. But the talk is programming with hand tools, and was it Chris Hauser? I forget, but the talk is
no,
programming with hand tools. And the point he makes in
core
that
async.
talk is industrial automation, right? Like frameworks are a form of industrial automation, which make default choices and provide like happy paths that you can walk down.
Tim
And
Baldrige.
they solve like it's a domain specific language for a domain specific problem. So the C# framework will have provided like its own decorator system or its own way to do dependency injection, or to modify meanings of like call stacks dynamically, because that's what a web application requires, right? You get this ultimately data representation, which is in the case of .NET or in case of Django will be wrapped in an object. It's like it's a mutable thing. And then this object will exhibit behaviors as it goes through the call stack and then come out of the other side as a response. So it's either like fundamentally a web application is a function of a request to a response. And the object oriented model manages the state transition as it goes through. Whereas let's say if you have a Clojure system, it's like hash maps all the way down. Like once the Jetty adapter gives us a hash map, then it's just a function of a hash map to a hash map to hash map to hash map to hash map, and ultimately like it really is just a multi-method. Like the whole web application is a multi-method. It's the essence of that is a multi-method for me, which is why I think people naturally gravitate to modeling it as an object-oriented system, because it looks a lot like an object. But I don't think it's exactly an object. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Maybe it is time to have brief conclusions by Kapil and Addie, and then we keep going unrecorded till ever. Is it okay? Or yeah, great. So Kapil, would you like to say something to conclude this meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun discussing different workflows and seeing two different ends of a spectrum, like right from coding in org to just coding with LLMs. Thank you for making the time, everyone. This was really fun.
Yeah, same sentiments. Thanks for making the time. Daniel, thanks for inviting us. And also, like, I'd like to say that because Kapil and I have done a little bit of community organization, doing it on a consistent basis is very hard and takes so much energy and effort. And I think I would appreciate you a lot, you and the other Cycloj, and also like the Clojure, Clojurians mods, like all of these people keep this place so very collegial. It's it's possible to have such a nice conversation with people from across the world, and it's mainly because of the tone and the quality of interactions that people like you enable. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and also on a personal note, I'm very happy to be friends with Kapil because he's at the cutting edge and I'm not. And if I need to be saved, I know whom to call. Please help me become relevant in the age of the AI.
The other way around is also good, that Adi is very skeptical of new things, so I have to make a really good case whenever I'm
Uh,
presenting anything.
yeah, I think so. I love the technology. I think it's insane that you can throw, a billion and 2 billion and 10 billion tokens at some otherwise fairly trivial maths formula, and you get
Yeah.
something that seems to understand like what you're saying. It produces, I think it's wild. It's completely insane that
Yeah.
and it's so, again, it's the aspect I appreciate of this is it's general purpose machinery. Like the same
Yeah.
system can solve, like train it on a text problem, it can solve a visual problem. You train it on a visual problem, it can solve, I don't know, a math problem. So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy that it's even possible. Um, it's just the business side of it and the hype cycle that I'm very skeptical about. And I don't. So for me, the AGI claim will be true if somebody is going to take one of these LLM systems and put them in the middle of a control loop. Like you make it run a nuclear plant for you, or you make it drive a ship or fly a plane for you. That's when I will buy that it's an AGI, because that's the kind of problem solving ability that it needs. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So we will say goodbye to the recording and thank you to our listeners. See you on our next times.